Am I correct in saying that you said at some point that we need to unify not quantum theory and general relativity, but quantum theory, general relativity, and observers? Okay, so most physicists tend to think of observers as coming from the physics, something emergent. Why do you think that we have to unify these three at the same time?
Right. So, and most physicists will tell you biology somehow will, emerge from once I have string theory, completely done and quantum gravity quantized. I call it wishful thinking. There is no evidence for that other than we think we kind of putting things in one way of saying putting under the rug. We're just saying if something is complex, well, yeah. But if I do long enough calculations, if I have long enough time, that's how it's going to work. And I don't, for example, one example, most physicists are convinced that quantum mechanics plays no role for how, for consciousness, how we function, how our brain works, right? So yeah, makes sense. Microscopic objects, why would quantum mechanics? But we have no, proof for that. We have no, and I think it is more wishful thinking. Again, related to how the second law of thermodynamics is wishful thinking that it has to be really working right. So I don't think so. But the other answer to that is that the fact that observers are very special and should be understood, I think, realized by most physicists who pay attention to two important problems in physics. One important problem is the measurement problem. So every single physicist who actually seriously thought about foundations quantum mechanics, not the person who is just doing shut up and calculate type of things and like following the manual of but who is trying to understand the study problem, will necessarily realize that there is a measurement problem. Measurement problem is about this third postulate of quantum mechanics, that is very new, because in classical physics, all we need is state and how it evolves. Here you need state, how it evolves, and how it is observed. So that's one. And then you kind of have to say something that maybe there is something an additional to quantum mechanics that you have to describe. Maybe it is an observer. Observer may play a special role. And if that's the case, if you realize that quantum mechanics is incomplete and the measurement seems to be playing a special role, then you are stuck with trying to describe it. Now, another problem in physics that comes around and also has to do with observer is cosmology. It's called the measure problem. Essentially, more or less a different problem, but more or less the same complication coming from observers. So if you're trying to assign probabilities to different observations in cosmology, what should be the right probability? We discussed the Boltzmann brain problems. It's a part of it. So you have to specify the rules. You have to describe how to deal with observers. And in both cases, if you actually think about this, the complexity comes from the fact that we are trying to put observer into the system. So when observer is outside of the system, we all know what to do. We know, there is a Hamiltonian, how to describe it. Once you put observer into the system, so this is, for more general audience, people know about Schrodinger cat problem. So if you put something and then a Winger's variant problem, and so if you start putting observers inside, things start to break. And
is it important that the observer is conscious?
Right. So at this point, no. There's something fishy about observers, but we don't have a model of observers. So once you say, okay, let's, some people would claim, yes, consciousness is important, and they have their own definition. I say it's important to model observer. So if you want to put it inside in the system, then you really want to model how it behaves and model not just saying, well, maybe some kind of emergent phenomena of biology will happen and maybe some kind of wave function collapse will happen. This isn't going to work if you're trying to do the calculation. So my answer is yes, observers are very important. And that's why you really have to describe them if you want to do calculations, even separately in quantum mechanics and gravity. And more so, and maybe because those two problems persist in cosmology, where is the gravity, and quantum mechanics, where there is the measurement problem, maybe the solution is actually try to understand how observers work. And then once you understand that, the both theories may some kind of be unified and the observer would be models as well, because it seems to be the problem with all of the with both theories. Which again, you can certainly put it under the rug. You can stop to ignore it. Maybe elephant is in the room is everybody knows it's there, but we are trying to look the opposite way. And I'm as you said, like I see this elephant, I say, well, it's there.
At what point do you imagine observers entered into physics? Is it at the Planck epoch? Is it prior?
So in this model, everything is conscious. There are observers everywhere. Every subsystem is an observer. Some of them are efficient observers. They have efficient architecture, so the loss function, falls down. Some of them are stable observers. They've already reached the very low value of the loss function. And some of them are not stable, and they've also always fluctuate out of. So any subsystem, because the entire the building blocks in this model are neurons, and they come with the trainable and non-trainable variables. Because of that, everything is learning. So everything in the sense is observer. Just some observers are capable of doing and asking perhaps more complex questions than others. So maybe, although we don't know, right? Maybe inside of electron there is whole complex neural network that has already solved the problem of quantum gravity and is just looking at us and laughing, saying, "Well, guys, I mean, it's simple." Okay.
Yes.
Maybe we don't know about that, but in this model, as a model, we started with this. I'm not saying this is how it works, but as a model, that could very well be.
As far as I understand, there's a number that you can associate with consciousness. How conscious is this subsystem? But consciousness to us is far more than just a number. Or we care about how conscious is someone most of the time when it comes to health. Are they alive? Should we remove the plug? And are they going to wake up? But our consciousness, we're conscious of so much. Mm-hmm. So in your model, do you have any qualia?
Right. So I was in one of the FQXI conference, and there was like a heated discussion. Every time consciousness is discussed, and if there are physicists and non-physicists in the room, it's always a heated discussion. And so should we call consciousness the person who's actually conscious in the sense of, talking and interacting with you, another conscious observer, or should we call consciousness something? So is it like discrete? I talk to you, then I call you conscious. And you reply. I talk to a dog, and he replies, "It's conscious." So yeah, absolutely. You can then say consciousness will be defined as a coupling. Strength of the coupling of the organism with sound wave or light or some electromagnetic phenomenon. You could do that. You can do that, and that would be your definition of consciousness. Maybe it's better than mine, right? And then we would not be arguing and say, okay, look, this is a person, he's not conscious. But then there'll be people who say, yes, I have such and such, friend or relative who is in coma, but he is conscious. And he will say, no, the fact that the person is in coma and isn't interacting with you the way you wanted to interact, it doesn't mean that he's not interacting with you some other way. And actually, I've mentioned, I have to say this speculative idea because, maybe philosophers will love it or maybe not.
Sure.
But we discussed for quantum mechanics, you need this bath of neurons. Otherwise, it just doesn't behave like. So it could be this bath of neurons is always there, but it's not in our physical space. It's in the hidden space, what I call. And if it's there, then nothing stops for a person who's not interacting with you in the physical space to interact with the hidden space. Okay. Maybe that's what you do in your dreams, or maybe people are interacting through this hidden space all the time, and people do claim that. So there's a lot of people who claim they have this special abilities, right, to interact, and I think we the reason we don't take it seriously, physicists, I think for two reasons. We don't have a good enough framework to modeling this, and the second reason, we don't have controlled enough experiments to do that. But I think we should not be disregarding that when we become equipped with a better mathematical model and with better experiments. So yeah, I wouldn't like this definition where the person is conscious only if he can hear or reply back. But that would, ChatGPT would be conscious according to that definition, because it certainly replies when you write. So again, there's a lot of discussion, maybe not very important about definitions, but we need to do this. We need to define terms before we can make statements, and that's just an attempt to do that.
What distinguishes between trainable and hidden variables? Like, do physical entities correspond to some, or even mental entities correspond to one, not the other, or what?
Right. So the hidden variables in this case are like hidden neurons, and their states are described by non-trainable variables. Something that, but all of the non-trainable variables in neural network are connected by trainable variables, called weights. So kind of you cannot like just draw a sharp line and say here's the trainable and here's not trainable. Very much like in physics, you cannot say here's electromagnetic wave and here are electrons. They're coupled. They're all communicating through each other. Now the difference of a hidden non-trainable variables and a physical non-trainable variables is that the one that are physical, they've organized themselves in these three-dimensional structures, and they've kind of discovered the effectiveness of using three-dimensional space for exchanging information and minimizing their loss function. The hidden space at this point, they can have arbitrary connections to each other. There is it's not maybe a good idea to think about. Initially, you have a soup of neurons. Everything is connected to everything, and it's all hidden in a sense that no physical space had yet emerged. And then there is bubble form, a Big Bang, and then there's a certain number of those neurons figured out that they can learn a lot more. It's like phase transition, and can minimize their microscopic loss function if they arrange themselves in the three-dimensional space. So if that phase transition took place, then you still have the hidden variables, which you can always hire if you need to do calculations, but they need not be present in your physical space. They need not interact with the classical degrees of freedom. They still interact by providing you with this quantumness, but they need not be directly observable and coupled. So that's the model for them. So and it is correct to call them hidden variables, because hidden variables is one of those. It's called interpretation quantum mechanics, but I guess it's an attempt to actually make quantum mechanics more mysterious, a little less mysterious, trying to actually, it comes with its own problems, and we can certainly talk about them, but at least it doesn't it tries to put less stuff under the rug. We physicists keep doing that, keep lying without saying that we are lying in a good sense. We're not doing it intentionally. We're simplifying things, right? But one of those things is that we are, we can say something like, I believe in the many worlds interpretation. But once you corner the person, he will admit that it's not as clear, and there are problems. So yeah.
The Economist covers math, physics, philosophy, and AI in a manner that shows how different countries perceive developments and how they impact markets. They recently published a piece on China's new neutrino detector. They cover extending life via mitochondrial transplants, creating an entirely new field of medicine. But it's also not just science. They analyze culture, they analyze finance, economics, business, international affairs across every region. I'm particularly liking their new Insider feature. It was just launched this month. It gives me, a front row access to The Economist's internal editorial debates, where senior editors argue through the news with world leaders and policymakers in twice weekly long format shows. Basically, an extremely high-quality podcast. Something else you should know about is that if you go to their app, they not only have daily articles, but they also have long-form podcasts with their editors and writers. This is also available online. Whether it's scientific innovation or shifting global politics, The Economist provides comprehensive coverage beyond headlines. As a TOE listener, you get a special discount. Head over to economist.com/TOE to subscribe. That's economist.com/TOE for your discount.